Massachusetts trial courts have been closed to the public for weeks, but in Boston, federal immigration courts were open and holding hearings, at least until this past Friday, after an immigration attorney reported someone she lives with had tested positive for coronavirus, and that attorney, Susan Church, joins me now. Susan, good to see you. So I want to get the chronology right. You're in immigration court a week ago today, last Monday. Thursday, yes. You find out somebody in your house is tested positive. What do you then do?
So I immediately called the courts and told them about the positive test. And the clerk called me back, asked me what part of the court I was in, where I had, what I'd been doing. And I told her the rooms that I was in. And then at 8:30, I think that was Thursday. So at 8:30 at night on Thursday, I got a call from the court saying, hey, we're shut down. The email from the courts that obviously pro se litigants don't get, right? People without lawyers, but the lawyers, at least, who are on their email chain were notified at 8:30 at night on Thursday that court was closed Friday, but they've opened again today. Yeah,
I want to get to that in a second, but I just want to understand this. Please correct me if I'm wrong. People before the court who are not in detention, those proceedings were postponed already. Is that not correct? So what's the rationale on the part of the immigration court officials to keep courts open and endanger people if the person is detained? I don't quite get it.
So I don't either, because there is separate litigation going on to release people who are detained with health problems, to release people who are detained who might have no need to continue to be in detention, things like that. The federal courts are taking, the real federal courts are taking an excellent approach to this. They are working with the public defender program. They're releasing people that they can release. They're holding video hearings so that the cases that have to go forward. But the immigration court is just, the deportation machine has to roll on at all costs. And the cost of risking the health and safety of prison guards, of court clerks. I talked to a court clerk today, and she has a family member at home with an underlying condition, yet I was in court speaking to her on Monday. If I had it, I could have been putting her family member at risk. We don't understand the rationale, except that all they care about is harming and hurting immigrants at any cost, including the cost of the health of our judges and court officers and everybody else who has to go in and out of those courtrooms.
By the way, for those who are listening and saying, well, this was just a demand of the immigration lawyers, what makes this even more incredible from what I've read is the union representing the immigration judges, the union representing the lawyers representing ICE itself, plus immigration attorneys. There was a rare moment of unity where all three legs of the stool were saying, shut these courts down. Yet the executive office, what is it called, for immigration review, said no, which makes it even more hard to understand, no?
Unfathomable. Unfathomable. I understand why police officers need to go to work. We understand why nurses and doctors need to go to work. The courts do not need to remain open except for the people who need to get out of detention. And those bond hearings can be done telephonically. Individual hearings, which are kind of the more complicated final hearings, those should be done by video, like every rational place on earth is doing now. Yet they're open, and my clients were brought into court personally on Monday. So I was there within 1 feet of my clients. One of my witnesses came to court for the hearings on Monday. She took the public transportation home after sitting next to me for, most of the day. It's crazy.
So, Susan, you said earlier on that after a one-day closure, which was the first sane move that they've made, and I assume that was just the Boston branch. Is that correct?
That's correct. That what they're doing is where they hear a positive, they'll close it for a day and clean it and then reopen the next day.
So you reported that there was a positive in your house. They closed for 1 day. And the rationale for reopening today is what?
The deportation machine must roll on.
No,
that's the only rationale.
They wouldn't say, if they were sitting here, they wouldn't say that. What is the cover? What is the argument as to how it is safe and why it is safe for all involved for these courts to be open?
So I'm not trying to be cavalier when I say that. There has not been a single statement that I've read, and I've followed this closely, and I've spoken to the immigration judges online and to their union, and I've been involved in the lawsuits to release people, and a similar obstinance is taking place in the release category. Judge Young had to order them to release a couple of offenders who had no criminal record during this outbreak, who were in custody. When the state courts have released, set up a release program, the federal courts are working to release people. It's just pure obstinance. They cannot stop deporting people for a second because they fear what would happen if they did. And I don't understand it.
And what are there, like 6 other immigration courts in the country? How many courts are there?
Oh my God, there's, I don't know the total.
Whatever they are. Are the other ones open as far as you know as well?
Yeah. And even worse than Boston, I will say Boston has been solicitous towards lawyers doing telephonic hearings. If you can do your hearing telephonically, they've been good about allowing that. But there's other courts in detention centers. So the lawyers are required to bring their own personal protective gear, their gloves and their masks, to go to court on behalf of their own clients. Up until mid-March, they were still trying to do the Remain in Mexico courts, bringing people in from Mexico into the court hearings. So they just won't stop. They will not stop.
We only have 30 seconds. How are you, by the way? I assume you're self-quarantined, are you?
Yes. Yeah, we're quarantined. I'm not allowed to leave. I am, knock on wood, fine. I'm just hoping that it doesn't spread. I think we caught it early. I really just don't know. It's a terrifying feeling. My husband has asthma, so we're really just crossing our fingers. It's pretty scary.
Well, we're crossing our fingers for you, too. Susan Church, as always, thanks so much for your time.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.